Her sword attack made the ground in front of her broken, and formed a small crater. Chai Nayun looked incredulous at what she had done. After Hajin was freed from Sven's grip, he then approached her and asked, "What was that? Was it a laser sword?" Nayun replied that she didn't know about it either. She then asked if he was okay. Hajin answered yes. Nayun was relieved to hear that, and she then just fainted. Hajin was then surprised to see her suddenly unconscious. A few moments later, when the stars lit up the night sky, Chai Nayun then woke up. But she was then surprised because she was now on Hajin's back. Seeing that, Hajin then asked if she was awake. Realizing her surprise, he then explained, he was carrying her because she didn't wake up. Nayun was really surprised by that. She then hurriedly told him to put her down. Hearing that, Hajin then asked, did she want him to drop her? Feeling embarrassed, Nayun then again told him to immediately put her down. Hajin could only sigh helplessly at that, and he then put her down, but when Nayun's feet touched the ground, she suddenly couldn't support it, which made her body fall to the ground. Nayun was really confused by that fact. She was very confused by what happened to her legs. Seeing that, Hajin asked, was this the first time she had run out of mana? Hearing that, Nayun could only stare. She seemed to have just realized that fact. Seeing that, Hajin explained, running out of mana was a state where she had used up all the mana in her body, and it thus reduced her mana recovery speed. Hearing him instead of explaining that basic knowledge to her, Nayun then irritably said that she already knew that. Hajin continued, she would not be able to move properly for 2 days, so he told her to just climb on his back, unless she wanted to stay there forever. Nayun could only feel annoyed by that, and she then climbed back on Hajin's back. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. To break the awkwardness, Hajin then asked, would she continue to use the bow? Nayun was really confused at his question. Hajin said that he knew she felt it today. Today, without intending to do so, Nayun awakened her talent, a power that could strengthen her abilities very strongly, as long as she had magic power. Domination sword that could cut down hundreds of monsters and jinns with a single strike. A person who could not be stopped in large-scale battles. He would later be called the king of the battlefield. For the sake of that future, it was better for her to keep her bow now. But Nayun seemed unable to accept that. She then irritably told him not to act like he knew everything. Seeing her attitude, Hajin thought, but it seems she still has a long way to go. After a while, Hajin then dropped Nayun off at the park. He said, there is the center of the portal, so she can go wherever she wants from here. Nayun was then surprised to see him suddenly drop her off. She then asked, where was he going suddenly? Hajin explained, his dormitory curfew had passed. He then said goodbye to her. Seeing that, Nayun then anxiously asked him to stop, and asked him to take her too. The next day, news of Chai Nayun being attacked by a jinn then spread throughout the cube. They were shocked and they heard that the jinn turned out to be Sven from the world class. They were confused as to when he became a jinn. They had even talked to him. And also why the cube officials remained silent about all this. Hajin continued to walk to his class while listening to the gossip, and when he went inside, he was then greeted by Kim Suho, but not only him, Kim Horak, Shin Jonghak, Yu Yona, and Li Yonghan were also there. Seeing that, Hajin thought, it seems, all the main characters have gathered. The day before the hunting club incident, the day when he got a call from Kim Suho. Suho at that time said that he had a favor to ask. Hajin was then confused to hear that. He then asked, what is it? Suho asked. He knows that lately there are many cases of people disappearing. Cube told them to investigate the case. Hajin finally understood. Cube, in order not to mobilize troops from outside, assigned the investigation mission to the cadets of each grade. The investigation representatives from Class 1 are Suho, Jonghak, and Nayun. Suho continued, of course Cube itself is also investigating. But since it seems that the culprit is a cadet, they said it would be easier if they caught the culprit. Hearing that, Hajin then said that he understood what he meant. But he then confusedly asked why he called him about this. Suho replied, he himself said, he had good eyes. He heard he could even see thousands of miles away. Also, Nayun recommended him. Hajin was then surprised to hear that. Suho then asked him again, if he could help. I guess that's the reason why Hajin took part in the meeting of the main characters. Suho then thanked him for coming. The reason why Hajin wanted to come was because he could get a lot of SP from here. Since everyone was here, Suho then said he would start. Before they discussed this incident, he wanted to tell his conclusion first. he told them to never think that the perpetrator of this case was the same as the jinn who attacked Nayun, but, his words suddenly stopped when Jonghak suddenly kicked the seat in front of him hard. He was very unhappy to hear Suho familiarly call Chai Nayun as Nayun. Seeing that, he then immediately corrected his words. Suho continued, by the way, it seems that Chai Nayun has a high possibility of becoming Jin's next target. Jin follows the demon's orders. So if the demon contracted by Sven is targeting Nayun, Jin who is contracted with the same demon as him will be targeting her too. Therefore, he wanted to ask them, if there was someone they suspected, like, who was acting suspiciously lately. Hearing that, Hajin thought, he knew who the real culprit was, but because he felt it would be dangerous to directly mention his name, he just kept quiet waiting for the story to develop, unlike in the original story, where 6 people disappeared within 2 months, but this is already 3 people who disappeared in just 2 weeks. In this storyline, there is a possibility that there will be more victims. Hajin clenched his hands tightly. He then recalled when Nayun thanked him. He didn't want to use the word waiting for the story to develop as an excuse for bad things to happen to them again, and he then raised his hand. He said, he thought the leader of the academics club, Yoon Hyan, was suspicious. The room was silent when they heard his guess. Suho then said that he had an alibi. They had investigated him because he was close to the first victim. Hearing that, Hajin asked, what if the victim met Yoon Hyan because of their own will? Hearing his conjecture, Shin Jonghak then questioned him, so he claimed that he could attract cadets only with some kind of hypnotic magic. He then mockingly said that he was sure it would work perfectly. Hearing his mockery, Hajin continued, of course it wouldn't work if it was just ordinary hypnotic magic, but before he could finish his words, Yuna interrupted him. She said that this was a little strange. He was accusing someone they already said had an alibi, but she thought he was more likely to become a jinn than the club leader. Hajin really didn't expect to hear Yona suddenly accuse him. At that time, when Hajin was still writing this novel, he felt it was time to include a supporting character, a rich character who helped Suho, someone with a sharp nature, but not so unlikable. Hajin smiled slightly. The character's name was obvious, Yuna, and the irony was, now he was being accused by the character he created as a jinn. Suho seemed to be quite surprised by that. He then told Yona that Hajin had an alibi. He was using a portal during the time of the incident, but that wasn't enough to convince Yona. She then said she would get to the point. A person's portal track record is easy to change, so his alibi wasn't as certain as Yoon Hyan. Hajin really didn't expect Yona to say that about him, but he was then surprised when he heard someone who said he wanted to hit him. That person was Kim Horak. He was sure Hajin would tell the truth or change his story after a few punches. He then asked their opinions about it. Shin Jonghak smiled cruelly at that. Lee Yonghan also seemed to agree with that. Hajin's gaze suddenly went blank when facing that fact, but he then suddenly laughed. Kim Horak was then confused at that. He asked, what's so funny? Don't make him destroy him. Hearing that, Hajin then challenged him to come forward. He also called him a stupid bastard. He said he would make a hole between his eyebrows. Seeing the quarrel, Suho then immediately came to break them up. Now is not the time to fight each other. He also asked Hajin to calm down. After calming himself down, Hajin then told them, if they thought he was that suspicious, he told them to just ask Chai Nayun. They were at the hunting club together, but before he could even finish his sentence, he was then startled when someone suddenly threw something hard at him. That person was Shin Jonghak. He then angrily asked him, why did Chai Nayun's name come out of his mouth? Hajin explained, when she was attacked, they worked together to kill Jin. He also mockingly asked him, had he not heard because he was too busy making childish pranks with his stupid gang. Shin Jonghak then got annoyed at his mockery. Lee Yonghan then immediately restrained him when he saw him wanting to come forward. Hajin continued, by the way, he had told them that he thought that bastard was the culprit. He then left there after saying that. Seeing him walking away, Kim Horak then annoyedly told him to stop, and as Hajin continued to walk out, he suddenly stumbled, but it actually made him manage to avoid Kim Horak's punch that was directed at him. The punch was so strong that it destroyed the entrance in front of them. Who knows what would happen if Hajin was hit by the punch? They were surprised when they saw it. Kim Horak was surprised to see Hajin able to avoid his attack. Hajin was really very upset at this time. Obviously he had to teach him a lesson, and he then took out his gun, and when their attacks were about to clash, fortunately Suho was able to quickly separate them. He then told Kim Horak that it was enough. he also told Yona that if she was that suspicious, she could ask Nayeon herself. Yona was silent for a moment. She then activated her smartwatch to contact Nayeon. Feeling annoyed, Hajin then got out of there. Seeing that, Suho then tried to stop her, but it didn't work. After a while, Yona then managed to contact Nayeon. Nayeon then said that Hajin couldn't be Jin. After not hearing a response from Yona, Nayeon then asked if she heard it or not. The whole room suddenly became quiet after hearing the certainty from Nayeon. While Hajin himself was now walking sadly, in the middle of the dark night, but he suddenly stopped his steps and sobbed. He sadly asked, "What am I doing?" Not only dropping his own novel, he was also working hard and fighting against the characters he wrote with all his love and affection. He was really fed up with this. He wanted to meet his parents and friends. He wanted to return to his home. He still had a year left in that place. He was also curious how time passed in his original world. If time passed day by day, would he be reported as missing? What about his parents? What if they go around looking for him? What if they are sad because of him? More importantly, can he really come back? The negative thoughts that he had been suppressing for a long time suddenly appeared at this time, but he was then surprised when the window system suddenly appeared in front of him. His tenacity increased. Hajin could only sigh at that. It really didn't know how to read the mood, but he was happy to see his tenacity increased. His old self did not dare to commit suicide or anything like that, but he must have given up trying to find a way to come back. Hajin then wiped his tears and stood up. He then looked at the sea in front of him. I don't know what thoughts were in her head at the moment. Back to Suho and others, Lee Yonghan then asked, "What about Hajin?" Suho said, "Apparently, they should not bother him." Yona seemed to notice the interaction between the two of them. She then asked Kim Horak, who was sitting next to her, "You used your talent earlier, right?" Kim Horak seemed a little scared when he heard her question. Yona said, "For a sharpshooter to be able to dodge a martial artist's attack like that, does he not know how suspicious he is?" But she suddenly got a message. The message turned out to be from Yoon Hyun, who had been the topic of conversation. He asked if they could meet in the classroom for a while before the club meeting. Yona was silent for a moment reading that. Somewhere, under the moonlight that illuminated the night, seeing Yona agreeing to his invitation, Yoon Hyun smiled happily. Blood spots were now seen covering his body. I don't know what he had done there. It seems that now he knows why people tell you to keep yourself busy when you feel sad. After hunting, practicing and eating as usual, he felt very tired to even think, but he was confused why they seemed worse than him. He silently asked them not to worry about him. He was fine, don't make him feel bad for them. He also thought, what is he doing to the characters he wrote? He should stop attracting attention and just focus on getting home. When Chai Nayeon had just entered the class, Shin Jong-hak then immediately approached her and worriedly asked, was it okay if she came to class just like that? Nayeon just laughed at that. She said, anyway there was nothing she could do at home. She was now seen wearing a walking aid, while extending her hand. Suho then offered to help her. Nayeon was confused at that. She then said that she could walk alone. Suho asked, was she sure? Seeing that, Shin Jong-hak then annoyedly told Suho to get away from her. He was really very annoyed to see Suho acting so familiar with Nayeon, while Hajin and Yona themselves just stared at them in silence. After a while, the class finally started. Kim Soo-hyuk then told them all to sit down. He announced, now, as they all know, in less than a week there will be midterms. Once the written exam is over, next will be the practical exam. The practical exam will be graded in two categories. First, duel between cadets, and the other is monster subjugation against illusory beasts summoned by the magician. These two exams will be different in difficulty from the normal class. He told them to remember it well and try hard. Hearing that, Hajin thought, for the written exam it would be easy, but he doubted about the duel. The duel exam used the 3-vote system, where you can choose the cadet you want to fight. At first, maybe it seemed like an opportunity for high-ranked cadets to easily win by choosing a low-ranked cadet, but in order to avoid this, Cube created a reward point system. For example, even if a first-ranked cadet wins a duel against the lowest-ranked cadet, since the rank difference changes based on the points you earn, then the first-ranked cadet will lose points thanks to this system. Of course there are people who ignore this system and use their voting rights to bully people they don't like that muscle-brained guy. Hajin had expected that Kim Horak would target him. Now that he thought about it, there was something else that bothered him. Hajin then shifted his seat slightly. He helplessly thought, aren't they sitting too close? Rachel, she kept close to him without saying a word, whereas she is usually the one who only studies alone at the back. He was confused. What was she doing? Was she trying to copy his notes? He felt Rachel staring at him silently. To prove it, he then wrote random writing on his notebook. Rachel, who silently stared at him then, was confused when she read the writing. Hajin chuckled at that. It was his parents' name. Yona got another message from Yoon Hyun. He said that he was already in the classroom, but he asked her not to rush to come. Yona just kept quiet when she read that, and she then headed there. When Yona entered, she was then immediately greeted by Yoon Hyun, who was already there. He put on a sweet smile when welcoming her presence, but Yona just put on a flat face as usual. Looking at the room, which was still quiet, she said, it seemed like the club members hadn't arrived yet. Hearing that, Yoon Hyun said that they would arrive soon. He then invited her to sit down first. After Yona observed the room more carefully, she was then confused when she saw the scented candles there. Yoon Hyun explained, people said it was good for improving focus. They would be studying soon. Also, he heard, she was assigned to the Jin investigation team. He was also part of it as a representative of Class 2. Yona understood. Not caring about her flat reaction, Yoon Hyun continued, but they didn't make any significant progress. He asked, what about her class? Are there any suspects she was thinking of? Hearing that, Yona replied, no, not yet, but someone said something very unexpected. Hearing that, Yoon Hyun then asked that, what did that person say? He was currently also controlling the scented candle to affect Yona. The effect of the candle soon appeared. Inexplicably, she felt very comfortable, and in a semi-conscious state. Yona said, he's a Jin. He said he used a mind magic. Unbelievable, right? Yoon Hyun just chuckled at that. He then asked, did he have proof? With a mocking grin, she then answered, of course not. But she then immediately realized something. She was confused why Yoon Hyun asked for proof. Feeling that he had blurted out, Yoon Hyun then immediately closed his mouth and mocked himself. He said that he misspoke. He meant why did he think that he was a Jin? But that was not enough to ease Yona's growing suspicion. Yona then took her whip and told him, when someone is innocent, he will not ask for evidence if he is suspected. While putting on a vigilant attitude, she then asked what she meant. Yoon Hyun just smirked at that. He then did not pretend anymore. He asked her, why is she like this, even though it is still a long time until her turn arrives? Cube's second-class dormitory. After a while, Yona then woke up. He now seemed to be in a condition bound by a rope. She was confused about the situation. She then observed the place where she was. She then knew that this was the second-grade dormitory. This also made her install a very large suspicion of Yoon Hyun. Was he really the culprit behind the disappearance of people? The real Jin, Hajin, turned out to be true. He was not talking nonsense. Yona then calmed herself down. First, she had to ask for help. She then vigorously tried to contact someone using her smartwatch. She was very anxious about the situation she was currently facing. She herself did not know who she contacted, but whoever it was, she hoped to save her. But Yoon Hyun suddenly appeared behind her, and said that he couldn't let her do that. Different from before, he now looked at her with a cruel gaze. Hajin, who was about to sleep, was then surprised when someone suddenly sent him a message. He was confused as to who it was tonight, and when he opened it, he was surprised to find that the sender of the message turned out to be Yona. He was also confused. When he read the message Yona sent, he didn't know what she meant by it. After knowing her plan, Yoon Hyun then grabbed her smartwatch. Reading the message she sent, Yoon Hyun asked, what would her friend think if she sent him such an obscure message in the middle of the night? Seeing the message sent to Kim Hajin, the genius who suspected him of being a Jin, Yoon Hyun then thought, it seems, he should kill him too later. Hearing that, Yona then angrily asked, did he really think he could get away with it after doing all this? The investigation team might have realized this and started moving, but Yoon Hyun replied that it didn't matter. He would leave the cube after this was over. Yona's expression became ugly after hearing that. Seeing that, Yoon Hyun said that he liked her expression, but Lady Lilith wanted to see her face filled with fear. Seeing the unclear message Yona sent, Hajin wondered, did she accidentally send this? And while pondering the contents of the message, he then realized something. 9 in Korean is gu, which is also the prefix of the word save, so it's code save me. Hajin then immediately opened the Book of Truth and asked where Yona's location was now, and when the Book of Truth told him Yona's current location, Hajin realized the gravity of this situation. Yona's situation was really very bad at the moment. Yoon Hyun used mind magic to influence her consciousness. He repeatedly called her name, and said, all this time, she had been lonely enough. He also understood that feeling, but when Yoon Hyun was about to influence her consciousness further, he was then surprised. When he saw that his mind magic did not have much effect on her, seeing that, Yoon Hyun praised, her determination was really strong. He couldn't believe it. She hadn't been brainwashed yet. Even after all this, all she needed to do was empty her mind in an instant. He told her not to be afraid. Lady Lilith had given him permission just for today. She wanted her to. Exasperation and panic could be clearly seen on Yona's face at this time. She then returned to trying to untie the ropes that restrained her with all her might. Yoon Hyun just smiled at that. It was useless. Even if she could escape, there was nowhere to run before the power of Lady Lilith's magic. His appearance had now turned into a full jinn, but a bullet suddenly hit his head. His blood flowed freely after his head was hit by a bullet. Yona was then shocked to see the sudden change. Yoon Hyun then screamed very loudly because of the pain. The shooter then said to Yona, look how it ended because of doubting the person she should trust. Yoon Hyun was really surprised to see the appearance of the person. He then asked who he was. The person did not answer and said, forget it. If he tried to recover, it was a special bullet, unless he did the bullet removal surgery. Yoon Hyun was then surprised to hear that. He cursed, with his sharp nails. He then attacked towards the shooter's location blindly. He also angrily asked, where is he? Come out here. His attack was really strong until it broke the glass there. It also slightly grazed Yona, which made her hair cut. Seeing that, the person then told him not to waste his efforts. Yoon Hyun could only get angry hearing that. He again asked where he really was. With the position of the finger on the trigger, the shooter said, I'm amazingly far away now. And he then showered Yoon Hyun with bullets. Yoon Hyun groaned in pain from that. It also made him unable to support his body, which made him fall. In the bushes far away, an object with a little shiny light was seen. It was a sniper rifle that was now held by Hajin. He was also the one who had been shooting at Yoon Hyun. Seeing Yoon Hyun, who was so helpless in facing him, made Hajin think, this is why long-range shots are the best. He then called Yona and said to her, it seems like he has used up all the bullets she gave him today. He is sure she will prepare something better for him if she has a conscience. Hearing that, Yona finally realized who had saved her this time. When Yoon Hyun tried to get up, Hajin then aimed at him, and shot him again. Yoon Hyun's body shook violently after being repeatedly showered with bullets. It seemed like it was only a matter of time before he died. Seeing that, Hajin then let out a sigh of relief. He saw something he shouldn't have seen. He then asked her, was she okay? Yona replied yes. Hearing that, Hajin then told her to just sleep. The investigation team would arrive soon. Yona understood. She also thanked him. In a hospital ward, Yona then woke up after being unconscious for who knows how long. Seeing her awake, Soho then asked, is she awake? Seeing him, Yona confusedly asked what he was doing here. Soho did not answer and asked her again. She was not injured anywhere, right? The doctor said, there was nothing wrong with her body. Yona said she was fine. She then asked again, what is he doing here? Soho replied, they took turns guarding her, him, Nayun, Jonghak, Horak. Hearing that, Yona asked, why? Soho replied, because they were partially responsible for this situation. They should have paid more attention to their fellow investigation team members, but they focused on something else instead. Anyway, they really apologized. Yona was silent for a moment hearing that, but she suddenly asked him, he must have been called stubborn by others, right? Soho then was confused hearing her sudden question. After her interaction with Soho, Yona then got to know a little bit about him. At first she thought Soho was just a talented guy, but it seems she misunderstood. Talking about misunderstanding, she then remembered about Hajin. She had accused him at that time. She then asked, did that person come? Soho then was confused about what she meant by that person, but Yona just told him to forget it. She seemed a little embarrassed. She then looked out the window, towards the bright sky that illuminated the world. Yona then thanked Hajin via messenger. She promised to definitely repay his favor. Hajin smiled reading that. The good news didn't stop there. His SP increased by 457, the luck effect was active. he got 11% additional SP, he succeeded in all long-range shots, the mastery grade of the Deadeye increased to grade 7, seeing that. Hajin wondered, isn't this the most SP he got from one action? He thought, the reward from taking care of one main arc was indeed amazing, there weren't many bonuses because he invested in a few things to snipe, but this much was good enough because he could save Yona too, but while he was busy struggling with his thoughts, he was then surprised when he heard someone calling him. It was Park Soo-hyuk. They had promised to meet here. He was surprised that Hajin suddenly contacted him. He then asked, was there a problem? But Park Soo-hyuk then suddenly sadly prostrated in front of him. If he wanted to cancel the contract, he begged him to reconsider. Hajin was then surprised to see that. He then said that he didn't mean to do that. Park Soo-hyuk was relieved to hear that, but he was then confused when he saw Hajin suddenly take out a suitcase. Hajin then said that he wanted to invest in SH Entertainment. Park Soo-hyuk could only stare at that. The ginseng that Hajin uploaded on Violet Banquet earned 400 million won in return. He used 250 million of it to invest in Packhorse Master stock, and planned to invest the remaining 150 million into SH Entertainment. The potential increase in SH Entertainment stock was the same as Packhorse Masters. While Park Soo-hyuk himself couldn't wake up from his shock, he couldn't accept such a large amount. Hajin told him to just accept it. He gave it to him so that the two of them could get bigger. He also asked him to buy him a magic pouch and a high-utility vehicle with this. Hajin then suddenly asked how old he was. Park Soo-hyuk replied. He was 29. Hearing that, Hajin then asked him to talk to him more casually. He was much older than him, but Park Soo-hyuk immediately refused. How could he talk casually to investors? But Hajin threatened. Then, should he just cancel the investment? Park Soo-hyuk was really helpless to hear that. He then said he would talk casually to him from now on. After solving the trivial problem, Hajin then invited him to stop by the convenience store first. When he got there, Park Soo-hyuk then confusedly asked why he suddenly rubbed the lottery ticket. Hajin said that he was too young, so he couldn't receive his reward without a guardian. After rubbing the lottery ticket several times, Hajin lamented. He couldn't even use his luck. He didn't seem to have gotten the reward from the lottery ticket he had scratched, but right after that, he finally got the reward. Hearing that, Park Soo-hyuk then asked how much. Hajin replied, 2 billion won. Park Soo-hyuk understood, but he then immediately realized after examining Hajin's words, he was really surprised to hear that he got 2 billion won. Hajin then said that he would also invest the lottery money. So he asked him to send him an amended contract. He then remembered. It seemed that it would be less than 2 billion because of taxes. Park Soo-hyuk then received the check sheet with great respect. He seemed to be very careful in keeping the check sheet worth 2 billion won. Hajin could only be confused to see it. He then asked, is there a problem? Park Soo-hyuk said, someone might steal it, so he took good care of it. It was late afternoon, in an abandoned building. Some kind of black liquid then emerged from the underground of the building. The liquid then formed a kind of human body. The liquid turned out to be a person. He then reported to his boss who was also in the building. They started moving. Packhorse Masters had been registered. He asked, what should they do now? His boss said, they would only take the item, the rest leave it alone. He understood, but he then remembered something. There was something strange. Someone bought a lot of Packhorse Masters stocks. He invested 3 million, 10 million and suddenly 250 million. Didn't he think that was too much money for someone who invested in the guild even without a guild page for good fortune? But his boss told him not to care about that. They just need to focus on what they have to do. Since his boss said so, he will do as she said. There are other things to report. There are some interesting pages open in the Violet Banquet. He then asked if she wants to see it. Party Relic Quest, Bosintang Milestone. Truth Agency. His hunch said that Truth Agency was suspicious. Like, they will find you anything you want, isn't that ridiculous? He asked. Should he put this in the request? Maybe they will find him for them. But his boss suddenly called his name. His name was Drun. Drun then said that he was just kidding. Come to think of it, they will start tomorrow, right? The Cube midterm exam. The hot topic behind this is the rank 1 and 2 new cadets of the Cube, Kim Soho and Shin Jonghak. Some members are planning to infiltrate. He then asked his boss, is she going too? His boss said yes. She then stood up from her sitting position. Drun was just silent seeing that. His boss paused for a moment, and said, she hopes there is someone useful. They turned out to be members of the Chameleon Troop criminal group. Time passed, and the week of practical exams finally began. There was a female cadet who looked very happy when she finally saw her mother again after a long time. Her mother was also happy when she saw her and asked how she was doing. The cadet hugged her mother's body tightly. She missed her. During the practical week, the cube opened the agencies that employ heroes such as guilds and associations, as well as the families of cadets. The huge crowds from all over the world were like a festival. Reporters from many media were crowded to report the event. Hajin himself just watched all the activities using drones, but there was still no big movement. Apparently, he would wait a little longer. He got all these drones from Park Suhyuk. He said this as a thank you gift, because he had placed them all over the cube area. They would increase the possibility of finding intruders, but he suddenly bumped into someone while walking backwards. Hajin then apologized to the person, but what he didn't expect was, the person was the head of the criminal organization Chameleon Troop. Hajin's mind suddenly went blank when he found out about it. He was really shocked. He almost forgot that this person also came to the practical exam. She just stared at him silently. Hajin then realized his carelessness. He looked at her eyes for too long. He had to say something so that he didn't look suspicious. But the words that came out of his mouth instead, how pretty, she could only be silent when she heard that. Hajin really couldn't stop thinking about his ridiculousness. And she then just left without saying a word. Hajin could only see her silhouette in the middle of the human crowd. The boss then contacted Drun. Drun then asked, what was wrong? The boss said, the person who had passed her earlier. He saw her through the perception blocking item. She told him to investigate. It wasn't just the heroes who came to the cube to recruit the participants. The Chameleon Troop also came here. Their goal was to either recruit Kim Suho or Shin Jonghak. Since Kim Suho didn't fit into their philosophy, he was disqualified and they started to take an interest in Shin Jonghak. That was the storyline. Their infiltration itself didn't cause much trouble, but if the story changed and they started to fight against the hero's test security site, then it wouldn't end with just 1 or 2 dead. The people there were then surprised when they suddenly heard screaming. Somewhere there, 2 people, a woman and a man, were seen walking together. The man said that he didn't see anyone suspicious, but the woman told him to stop playing and search properly. Why would they be heroes if someone bypassed the cube security during the practice week? Hearing that, the man casually said that they just needed to eliminate them before they became a problem. The man was Oh Junhyuk, rank 1737, high rank, 6th grade hero, while the woman with him was Seo Yangji, rank 2000, high rank, 7th grade hero. Yangji was really annoyed with his attitude. All he could do was talk, but Junhyuk didn't care at all and instead invited her to eat pizza, but what they didn't realize was, their conversation was currently being eavesdropped on by someone, but that person suddenly got interesting news. The news was about Hajin, who saw through the perception blocking feature of the siren's necklace and saw the boss. Finally he felt interested. Everything he saw here was weak, so he felt very bored. He wondered what kind of man he was. He decided to take a look at him first, then try to fight with him. Drun, who was watching him, was completely speechless at his thought. This damn fool. He then told him to relax a little. They could confirm whether he would appear as expected or not even if they didn't do anything. As they were about to start the duel, the midterm practical exam arena, the second arena, the host then announced to all the viewers, 9 o'clock this morning, the first battle would finally begin. Their cadet informants had been racing to get to this fiery place, the first duel where 1 appointment pass had been used. As Hajin was walking in the hallway, he was suddenly called by someone. That was Yona. She asked, is he heading to the arena? Hajin confirmed it. He's the first up. Yona understood. She then called her assistant named Sechin. She then handed the suitcase that Sechin was carrying to him. This is 1,000 high-quality bullets, although he couldn't use it during the exam, but he could use it whenever he wanted. She told him to tell her if he needed more, and just so he knew, she wouldn't consider his rescue even with just this, so, she asked him to just consider it a gift. She then also remembered. They kept calling her to testify about the Jin incident, but she didn't tell them that he was the one who helped her by shooting the Jin. Hearing that, Hajin then asked her to keep it a secret. Hajin knew that he would get into more trouble if it was discovered that he was the one who shot Yu Hyun. The Jin who contracted with Lilith had a bad nature. Yona was silent for a moment. She then said, she understood he hid his power for some reason, but it would be difficult to pass the practical exam if he continued like that. Hajin could only be confused to hear Yona say that he hid his power. Seeing his confusion, Yona asked, did he know who his opponent would be? Hajin knew that, in the participants' waiting room, there was someone who was training hard. Sweat flooded his body because of his intense training. That person was Kim Horak. He was really determined to destroy Hajin. After Drun checked Hajin's life history, he then reported that he found nothing. He had lived in an orphanage, had no parents or relatives, was accepted by the military academy at the age of 6 after they found that he had special abilities when checking the orphanage where he lived. He was a low intermediate rank student, did not do anything that highlighted any specialness until he finally entered the cube. He had a debt of $300 million, but that was it. The boss was silent for a moment hearing that. She was confused how he could see through the perception blocking item and realize her existence. Drun said that he didn't know either. In the midst of their confusion, they then had another member of the chameleon troupe. He was Chiak Jungyang. He then greeted the boss. Long time no see. Seeing him, the boss said that he was late. He didn't wander anywhere on his way here, right? Hearing that, Jungian then immediately defended himself. He only followed her instructions to look for talented people and came here. Hearing that, the boss then asked, what did he find? But Jungyang said that he didn't find anyone. They were all weak, which would be destroyed with just a jolt to their heads. Drun said that it was expected. He asked, if there are any promising cadets. Jungian replied, not really. He went and checked out the first place second year. And he wasn't really all that. Drun could only sigh helplessly hearing that. They said, this year's cube first-year students are very promising. So they especially had to check them out, and coincidentally, there was a first-year student named Kim Hajin's battle about to start. Hearing that name, Jungian then remembered that it was the guy who looked aware of the boss' existence even though the boss was wearing her item. At the cube midterm practical exam arena, the atmosphere there was lively. There was also Junhyuk who was eating pizza. He was still with Yangji. The place made him nostalgic. Hearing that, Yangji then mocked him. Was he sure it was nostalgia and not traumatic? He had been beaten up so badly. He couldn't even watch boxing anymore. Junhyuk said that he was fine, and his son really liked it. Yangji was happy to hear that, but then she was surprised. When she saw someone who kept staring at them, she was confused who it was. He kept watching them and smiling. Junhyuk finally realized it too. He asked if he was their fan. That person was none other than Jungian, but they then decided not to care anymore. Because the match was about to start, Kim Horak was seen coming up to the arena, rank 19 cadet, martial artist Kim Horak. He might not be a match for the top 6, but he was also quite skilled, and his opponent was. They were then surprised when they read the information about Kim Horak's opponent, rank 934, Kim Hajin. Their surprise made sense, because the rank between the two of them was so far apart. Seeing him who had now also climbed the arena, Kim Horak then asked, how was his written test? Hearing his question, Hajin smiled and mocked him. It seemed that he was currently too tense. He told him to relax. Kim Horak was then annoyed to hear that. Horak's special ability was the ability to turn his mana into a transparent barrier around his body. That ability was called Key Armor. Not only would he not be able to scratch him with training bullets, he would be very lucky if he didn't split him in half after catching him. He couldn't let him get close to him. After the two cadets were in the arena, the host then announced, the midterm duel of the first semester of the first year was about to start, and the first match started right after the host said that. Kim Horak then moved towards him quickly. He had coated his fists with sharp metal this time. It would be very dangerous if Hajin was hit by it. Seeing that, Hajin then activated bullet time. Kim Horak's movements were now very slow in his eyes. The duration of bullet time had increased a lot. Hajin thought he should be able to follow Kim Horak's movements for at least 1 minute. And when Kim Horak finally launched an attack towards him, the floor where he was originally standing was completely destroyed after being hit by his punch. Fortunately he managed to dodge. He was very surprised when he saw the power of his punch. He wondered, he was a tank or what? Seeing Hajin manage to avoid his attack made Kim Horak upset. He then launched another attack on him. The power of his attack was really strong. The floor was instantly destroyed after being hit by his attack, and Hajin could only continue to dodge without any chance to counterattack. But after he was finally able to widen the distance with Kim Horak, he then aimed his gun at him, and shot him. Kim Horak just smiled dismissively at the shot. Didn't he know about his key armor? He could easily dodge a bullet like this, but when his fist finally clashed with the bullet, the most unexpected thing happened. The bullet actually managed to penetrate the key armor that he was proud of. The audience who saw it were also surprised. They were shocked to see him successfully penetrate the key armor. Kim Horak was completely baffled by what had just happened. It was impossible for a bullet to penetrate his key armor, but when he saw Hajin reloading his gun, he became so horrified. He immediately shielded his body from the hail of bullets from Hajin, but what the hell, the bullets could easily pierce through his key armor and hit his body. Hajin smirked at that. Sorry if he thought the bullets would bounce off him. He had combined his stigma power with the bullets, and made them magic resistant, and Hajin then returned to shooting at him. The crowd cheered the battle, while Kim Horak passively took the shots. He then irritably pounded his fist on the ground. The pounding was so powerful that it destroyed the entire arena floor. Seeing that, Hajin immediately retreated while avoiding the flying debris. Different from before, Hajin then threw a knife at him. He also told him to be careful, seeing the knife flying towards him. Kim Horak then immediately moved to avoid it for fear of something special from the knife as well as the bullet. Hajin laughed mockingly at that. He said that it was just a trick, and he then returned to shoot at him with bullets. Kim Horak could only helplessly take the shot. After who knows how many bullets hit him, he now had difficulty even standing up. Seeing that, Hajin then moved closer to him, with an aiming position. He then positioned his finger on the trigger of his gun. The atmosphere became tense when the audience witnessed it, but the confusing thing was, Hajin never pulled the trigger. Kim Horak was then confused to see that. The audience was also the same. They wondered, did he run out of bullets? But Kim Horak is extremely exhausted as well. Realizing that, Kim Horak then tried to stand up. He looked at him angrily. Seeing that, Hajin smiled. He then suddenly dropped his gun and said that he surrendered. Kim Horak was then dumbfounded to see that. The audience was no less surprised than him. With Hajin's surrender, the host then announced the end of the match. The winner was Kim Horak, but Kim Horak was not at all happy when he heard that. Seeing Hajin coming down from the arena, he then angrily told him to return to the arena, but fortunately the security guards immediately restrained him who wanted to fight again. When the medical staff checked Kim Horak's condition, he was then confused, not that he was hit by a live bullet, but he looked fine. Was it because he was a martial artist? After watching the match, Junhyuk then asked Youngji's opinion about it. Youngji said that Hajin did well, while Kim Horam was too rash. Instead of wasting his armor's intrusive ki energy in advancing instantly like that, he could have attacked slowly and won with his physicality. He made himself look foolish by showing off excessively. What made her more interested was Kim Hajin. His unreasonable streak and vision to follow the movements of a martial artist. But at a certain time, Hajin slowed down when Horak started to slow down. He wondered, was it a special ability that increased his physical ability? And also, he condensed and inserted mana into his bullets. Hearing that, Junhyuk asked, did she mean to say he managed to condense his mana to a degree that was enough to penetrate key armor? He didn't believe an ordinary cadet could do that. Youngji said that she didn't know what talents this Hajin cadet had, but it was possible that he was doping. After waking up from their shock, the scouting members of many guilds then immediately contacted their superiors and reported what had just happened. Although Youngji suspected Hajin of doping, but she believed the potential he had could be one of the greatest in history. Youngji thought that she should remember him. Seeing her serious demeanor, Junhyuk just chuckled, and then said that the next match was about to start. After watching Hajin's match, Jungyang's first impression of him was that he did not like him. He was not happy to see him just shooting bullets in a row from a long distance with a small gun. He was confused as to why the boss was paying attention to him. Hearing his complaint, Drun asked him if he didn't realize that he had a magic resistance ability, but he didn't care about it at all. What did it have to do with being strong? Hearing that, Drun then questioned him. He just doesn't like him because he's a ranged fighter, right? Jungyang didn't dodge, relentless hard work and bloodlust to kill each other. That's the real match. Drun was really tired of dealing with him. He then told him to use whatever ultimate magic it was to find a cadet who was strong enough. He also told him not to forget the reason the boss brought him here. Had he checked out Kim Suho and Shin Jonghak? Jungyang said, the two of them weren't too bad. Jonghak's oppressive spearmanship, aimed at striking the enemy's vital points instantly, was impressive. He was also interested when he bullied the loser who started defensively, but hearing that Jungyang was interested in him made Drun less hopeful about his personality. For Kim Suho, Zhang Yang said that he was a little special. Drun was then confused to hear that. He used a swordsmanship that resembled jiamu. It was a traditional Korean swordsmanship. It was clear from his movements that he practiced for a long time, but something was off when he saw Suho fight at that time. He felt like he was hiding his true personality. Hearing that, Drun caught what he meant, so he said there was something off about rank 1 cube, but Zhang Yang said that he wasn't so sure. He didn't want to fight any of them for now. After that, Drun then asked his opinion about Hajin. Hearing that, Zhang Yang irritably asked, did he also pay attention to him? Drun replied, of course. Magic resistance is an ability that the boss has been looking for all this time. Zhang Yang then said that he had already told him that he didn't like him, but their conversation was suddenly interrupted. When an officer saw Zhang Yang there, the officer explained, this forest is forbidden for outsiders. Please leave this place immediately. Zhang Yang was really annoyed at his interruption. Seeing him who had not yet left there, the officer then once again asked him to leave immediately. Zhang Yang felt very annoyed, and when the officer was about to ask him to leave once again, Zhang Yang then snapped his fingers on his head. The officer's fate was clear after being hit by the flick. The flick was so strong and loud that it surprised the birds. Blood was splattered on the ground after the officer's death. Seeing that, Drun asked, did he finish him? Zhang Yang grinned and confirmed it. Drun then said that the boss would kill him. Hearing that, Zhang Yang then asked him to keep this a secret. He also finally felt happy now. In the city in the cube, it was already late afternoon when the sun was about to set. The boss was seen looking at the scene. He then recalled the memories she had stored deep in her memory. At that time it was raining heavily. In such conditions, in front of someone's tombstone, she promised to find the traitor. No matter what, she would find them, and avenge him. That person seemed to mean a lot to her. The boss clenched her hands tightly as she recalled that. She then called Drun, and told him to mark Kim Suho, Shin Jonghak, and Kim Hajin. Drun understood. He asked, what about the priority scale? The boss replied, magic resistance ability can beat magic constitution, so she told him to prioritize Kim Hajin. Drun understood. But he was still hesitant. Was it okay? There was only a little information about him. The boss said that it was not important. She would check it with her own 2 eyes tomorrow. The second day of midterms, Arena 1, the atmosphere was still as lively as the previous day. The audience then saw the talent evaluators from major guilds such as Blade and Creator's Sacred Grace melting with them. The quality of the audience was much different from the first day. It was natural because the match of the day was between rank 1 cube cadet Kim Suho versus rank 8 cube cadet Yohei, and rank 3 cube cadet Rachel versus rank 4 cube cadet Chai Nayun. A match between the top-ranked first-year cube cadets. They were really excited to watch it. They wondered. The first match was between Nayun versus Rachel, right? Isn't that too disadvantageous for someone long-range archer like Nayun? While Hajin himself was now listening to their conversation quietly from the back, he silently thanked that extra characters for the description. Nayun should have lost badly against Rachel today. It was impossible for her to win against Rachel using a crossbow, a weapon that did not suit her talent at all. After the 2 cadets climbed into the arena, the host then announced, the 8th duel for the first-year cadets began. After the announcement, Nayun then grinned at Rachel and asked, why don't they exchange ranks today? With an upward aiming position, Nayun then shot her arrow into the sky. The arrows then spread out, which then rained down towards Rachel. Even so, Rachel was able to dodge the arrows. It even felt quite relaxed for her, and when an arrow missed and was about to hit her, she then brushed it off using her rapier. Nayun was really surprised to see that. She did not expect her attack to be denied by Rachel so easily. The audience cheered when they saw that, while the audience was enjoying watching the match. Someone came. The person then looked towards Hajin, who was also watching the match. As the person approached him, Hajin then finally realized the presence of the person. The person turned out to be the boss of the criminal group Chameleon Troop. She sat next to him without saying a word. Wanted criminal, blacklisted by the Hero Association, boss of the famous Chameleon Troop. A powerful woman who managed to hide herself behind countless names and anonymity. The only person in the world who knew her name was him, and her name was. But his thoughts were soon interrupted when he saw an audience who accidentally poured his drink towards her. Hajin was completely shocked and horrified to see that. The audience then immediately apologized. He felt very guilty. He asked if she was okay. Hajin still couldn't wake up from his shock when he saw that. Shortly after that, the match then ended. and the winner was Rachel as Hajin had expected. Hajin then gave the boss a tissue to clean her face. The boss didn't seem to expect this to happen to her. She then thanked him for the tissue. Hajin said that it was nothing. The boss said that she watched his match against Cadet Kim Horak, the ability he showed during the match. She asked him if that was his talent. The boss then gave him her business card. Hajin was surprised to see that. On the business card Hajin also saw the name of the boss, which was Li Xiaofeng. But he knew that was not her real name. This must be one of her fake identities. But Hajin pretended not to know and asked, was she from a guild? It was not forbidden for her to communicate with a cadet before graduation, but when the boss was about to pull back her business card, Hajin then immediately said that he didn't say that he wouldn't accept it. While looking at Kim Suho's match that had already started, the boss then said that she couldn't give him exact details, but she guaranteed that it would be beneficial for him. After her goal was achieved, the boss then said that she would leave. She asked him to please contact her anytime. Seeing her walking away, Hajin confusedly thought there should be no reason for the boss to meet him in person at this time. He was also confused why she was here. After a while, the host then announced the winner of the match between Kim Suho versus Yohei. The winner was Cadet Kim Suho. After today's match was over, the audience then left the arena. After watching Suho's match today, they really felt amazed at him. They also still couldn't believe that Nayeon lost against Rachel. This was also the first time for them to witness a talented Korean cadet lose against a foreign cadet. Hajin himself was now taking back the drones he had installed throughout the cube. He wondered if his surveillance drones had found anything. He would have to check later at the dormitory. But as Hajin was walking to the dormitory, he suddenly heard the sound of sobbing, and when he looked for the source of the sound, he then saw Nayeon, who was crying secretly. Seeing that, Hajin then remembered about this incident in the novel. In the original story, Suho encouraged Nayeon when she was sad because of her defeat. It became the catalyst that caused Nayeon to have feelings for Suho. You can win if you try harder, let's fight hard together. Hajin knew such nonsense would not help Nayeon now. In her situation like this, sometimes in life, giving up is necessary, but giving up was not in Suho's dictionary. He would not suggest it to anyone, and he himself would not give up. Nayeon would not let go of her vow because of Suho. But Hajin suddenly got an idea. Nayeon was then surprised and confused when she suddenly got a message from someone. The message was of course from Hajin. He said that he watched his match. Nayeon was then confused to read that. But what made her even more confused was when she read Hajin's next message. Hajin said that he had already said it. She was more suitable for using a sword than a crossbow. Now it's not too late. Just like him, he suggested that she change her weapon from now on. He also sent a thumbs-up emoticon to her. Nayeon could only be stunned reading that. Right after that, Suho and Yonghan finally found her. Suho asked, where has she been? They seem to have been looking for her. It took a long time. Until he found her, why did she just run away? But he was then shocked when he saw Nayeon's face, which looked full of anger. Nayeon was very angry because Hajin pretentiously told her to change her weapon that she had practiced from childhood. Suho could only be confused to see that. Time continued to roll, and the first midterm practicum exam match had ended. After Hajin returned to the dormitory, he then checked the footage on his drone. There he saw the footage of Jungyeon killing a security guard. He then stopped the footage at that scene. He was silent for a moment. He was very surprised when he saw it. He wondered, was he also part of the chameleon troupe? He killed people without hesitation. He kills people just because he wants to, just for his personal satisfaction. In this world there are many people like that. This world has become a comfortable world thanks to science and magic, but behind it there are inhumans, who consider themselves above morals and rules, even though they are also humans. But they reject the existence of heroes, with supernatural powers greater than ordinary villains, which are used against heroes. They are villains. Villains in the novel are not the only thing to worry about. Thanks to the co-author who has changed the plot of the novel, it is now impossible to know what kind of villains will appear in the future. The next day, midterm practicum, at the monster subjugation exam site, seeing the cadets who had gathered, the magician in charge of the exam this time then introduced herself to them. Before the exam began, she would briefly explain it first. What they saw them in front of was the place where they would carry out the exam. There, they had to defeat the illusory beast summoned by the magician. This test is much more dangerous than the training they have done before. The beasts summoned here will have the same power as real monsters, and they will not disappear immediately even if the magician who summoned them cancels it. She asked them not to be too excessive in endangering their lives. If the situation worsens, just give up immediately. The cadets looked worried when they heard that. The magician continued. The criteria that will be judged is how long and how calm they handle the situation. The magician then ended his explanation. She hopes they will do their best. 4 people will start the exam at the same time, starting from Group 1. Group 1 consists of Hazuki, Kim Junho, Yu Jongjin, and Spainer. Hearing their names called, they then headed to the exam arena. Just before the exam began, the magician then said to the other cadets, while they were waiting for their turn, she suggested them to observe other cadets' fights, see how each cadet handles monsters, see if they have any flaws. Observe thoroughly, and if there's a better way to fight, they can express their views. After explaining at length, the magician cleared her throat for a moment. She then asked them to turn off their smartwatches, and also, their reports will also affect the exam grade, so she asked them to do their best. It was really bad news for Nayeon. After saying that, she then started the exam now. Hearing that, a magician then summoned illusory beasts to each cadet. The illusory beast Hazuki is facing right now is an evolved ghoul, and when the illusory beast attacks towards her, she looks quite overwhelmed in blocking the attack. While watching their battle, the other cadets look pensive and analyze the match deeply for the report material. Time is ticking. Now it is the turn of Group 2 to carry out the exam. Lee Yonghan joined the group. He looked very confident when facing the illusory beast. He then concentrated his magic power in his fist, and threw it towards the beast. He managed to subvert the illusory beast with just one powerful attack and made him completing the exam. After that, it was the turn of Group 3 to carry out the exam. Chai Nayeon joined the group. She finished the illusory beast she faced quite easily by showering it with arrows. Nayeon laughed happily after successfully completing the exam. Time continues to roll. The main characters have been called one by one to carry out their exams. After who knows how long, it is now the turn of Group 10. Hajin joined the group. The illusory beast he is facing right now is Chrome Wolf. Hajin faces the illusory beast in a stable way. He will continue to shoot at it from afar until it falls. If he continued like this, he would finish his exam without any problems. But the emergency alarm suddenly sounded while he was doing his exam. The whole room was suddenly red. Hajin was then shocked and confused to see it. The other cadets were the same. Junhyuk as the exam security officer then got a call from someone. He then asked, "Is there something happening at the exam building?" Hearing his question, Yongji then scolded him. She told him to focus on his guard. Junhyuk could only apologize for hearing that. Yongji then asked him, he knows about the guard who was killed while on patrol yesterday, right? Now this is an emergency. She told him to stay alert. Junhyuk understood. By the way, he then asked, did she know where the source of the vibration was? Yongji replied, they speculated that the source of the vibration was on the ocean floor in his direction, but they could not find the exact location. Hearing that, Junhyuk hoped it was not something serious, but suddenly he heard the sound of someone's footsteps from behind him, and when he looked back, he then saw someone walking towards him. That person was Jungyang. He did not expect that there was someone here. Seeing him, Junhyuk immediately warned him. This place is prohibited for outsiders. He also asked, is he lost? But Jungyang asked him back, then, why was he here? Junhyuk replied, it was because he was not an outsider. He really couldn't understand the question. Jungyang then decided not to talk anymore. Junhyuk immediately became alert. With a cruel grin, Jungyang then told him to stay out of his way and get out of the way, if he didn't want to die. Junhyuk certainly wouldn't just obey. In the midst of this tense situation, suddenly, there was a very large vibration in the sea behind them. They then immediately looked towards the source of the vibration. Junhyuk was then horrified, when he saw such a large movement in the sea that it created a towering whirlpool. In the whirlpool was also seen a very terrible creature. Back at the exam site, the invigilator also realized the situation. They then announced to the cadets, they postponed the exam because there was a problem around the exam building. For all cadets, please leave the exam building immediately. The magician then went to the exam arena and told the group 10 who were conducting the exam to stop their exams and leave this place immediately. Hajin was really confused at this time. What was happening now? In the midst of the panic that engulfed the cadets, a silhouette of someone heading to the exam building was seen. The exam building was now shaking violently, but what made Hajin even more worried was when the summoning of the illusory beast was not cancelled. In that tense situation, there was a sudden sound of shock from the invigilator when they saw an unknown person entering. Hajin felt that this situation was not an ordinary incident. One of the magician here must be a jinn. It wasn't Jinhua, a magician who was the proctor of this exam. There was no notification of the setting change when he was nearby. In fact, he didn't detect any changes in anyone in this exam building. But he suddenly realized something. He then worriedly looked in a direction. There was the sound of footsteps of someone who had just entered the room. The person then approached Rachel and greeted her. "Long time no see, Princess Rachel." Rachel was very surprised when she saw the person. Hajin guessed, very likely, there were some extra characters that had never appeared in the original storyline. For example, Kim Chun-dong, the person who appeared was named Sir Alex Lancaster. This was a story that Hajin did not know. Seeing him, Rachel then respectfully asked, "After the London incident a few years ago, where has he been, and what is his appearance?" Hearing her question, Lancaster smiled. His eyes also shone red. Rachel really couldn't believe what she saw. He is currently also aware, so he has sold his soul. Realizing that, Rachel then scolded him. How could a former Imperial Guard captain like him do such a thing? Hearing that, Lancaster then said that there was a mistake in her words just now. He did not sell his soul. A new lord simply took in his soul, a soul that was betrayed by the very country he devoted his whole life to. Rachel gripped the hilt of her rapier tightly when she heard that. She realized, there seemed to be no point in talking to him. She would catch him in this place. With a quick movement, Rachel then rushed to attack towards him, but when she slashed towards him, Rachel was then surprised, because she felt like she was not slashing a human body. Seeing her confusion, Lancaster explained, unfortunately, his real body was not in this place, but elsewhere. He only showed himself here for a little entertainment. Out there is very chaotic. They do not have time to pay attention to this place. With the attack of monsters like Imugi, the exam site is really in total chaos. No one will come to help her. Lancaster then asked her, "Isn't this very different from United Kingdom, where countless deaths, regardless of the number, will be ignored, and only the royal family is the highest priority to protect?" Rachel could only be silent hearing that. Lancaster then recalled the memories of that time. When the tragedy occurred, the room was completely covered in blood. He was seen hugging the body of someone who had died sadly. That person seemed to be very important to him. That incident made him hate the United Kingdom. Lancaster was silent for a moment when he recalled the painful memories. He actually wanted to talk more, but he didn't seem to have time. He then said goodbye to her. Seeing him about to leave, Rachel then immediately tried to stop him, but her efforts were in vain, because Lancaster then disappeared from there, and where Lancaster disappeared, then someone appeared, the person carrying a dagger and dressed like an assassin. Without saying a word, the assassin then rushed to attack Rachel. Rachel was then surprised to see that. She then immediately used her rapier to withstand the assassin's attack. But she was overwhelmed by how powerful the assassin's attack was. They clashed many times. But Rachel always lost when their attacks clashed. Her body was even slashed everywhere. Rachel realized, she could not win if she faced him directly. She had to take risks and aim for an opening. But before she could even carry out her plan, the assassin had already attacked her first. He targeted her hand holding the rapier. It made her rapier thrown from her hand. Her situation was really dangerous at the moment. She was facing an assassin who was much stronger than her with no weapons, but what the assassin did not realize was, the bracelet on Rachel's wrist suddenly glowed. Her rapier that was now far away from her did too, and as the assassin charged towards her, Rachel then controlled her rapier to fly towards him, but before their attacks could even clash, the wall behind them was suddenly destroyed. They were shocked to see it. On the wall that had been perforated, a silhouette of a person appeared. The assassin paused for a moment to see it, with a very fast and silent movement. The assassin then rushed to attack the person. The person turned out to be Hajin. Seeing the assassin rushing towards him, he then turned his Desert Eagle into shotgun mode, and fired it at the assassin when the distance between them was close enough. The shot really made the assassin's body crumble out of shape. The environment suddenly became quiet after Hajin finished the assassin easily. Hajin himself was quite surprised. Was it over with just one shot? But after he thought about it, it was only natural. It should be, because it was an attack that required 250 SP. Rachel still couldn't wake up from her shock. She was very shocked when she saw that. She also recognized Hajin. He was in the same class as her. Hajin then walked towards her and asked if she was okay, but after seeing Rachel's condition, he then realized how ridiculous his question was. He then said that he had a bandage, and as Hajin cleaned the blood off her wound with a cloth, Rachel winced in pain. Seeing that, Hajin said that if he was even a little late, she wouldn't be able to use the sword anymore, but when he saw Rachel's blood on the cloth, he then realized something. He unexpectedly managed to get the blood of Cube's top-ranked cadet. After all her wounds were wrapped in bandages, Rachel then thanked him. Hajin was quite surprised to hear her thanks. He then asked her not to think too much about it, but the lights in the room they were in suddenly turned on. Someone then called the two of them from above. She asked if they were hurt. They came to save them. The person was Jin Juhua, the magician in charge of supervising the exam this time. The person who was with her then reported to her, there were 2 cadets in the exam hall next to this place who were seriously injured. She was then surprised to hear that. She was also very angry at this time, who would dare to do something like this, somewhere by the sea. Junhyuk was seen brooding while looking at the vast ocean in front of him. He was then surprised when he heard Yangji who called him from behind. Yangji asked, "What happened here? Did an Amugi appear?" Hearing that, Junhyuk said that she came late. The Amugi had been chased away. Yangji was then surprised to hear that. She then asked him, "Did he chase it away?" Junhyuk replied, "No, an intruder did it." He didn't know who triggered it, but the Amugi went berserk. Even so, the intruder attacked it blindly until he drove it away. He was amazed at the strength of the intruder when he witnessed it. He was really strong, but Yangji didn't just believe his story. She with a look of disbelief asked, "Did he tell her to believe it?" Junhyuk was not surprised at her disbelief. He himself could not believe what he had just seen, but he suspected that the intruder was likely to be a suspect in the murder at the police station. He asked her to do a search for him. In addition to the appearance of an unknown intruder, there was also the appearance of high-ranking monsters. It seemed that this midterm was a failure. He thinks it will be difficult for Cube executives to escape reprimand because of this incident. In conclusion, the Cube monster incident that happened yesterday became a worldwide issue, and the midterm was postponed, because many people were assigned to clarify this incident to the public and assist in rectification. After that, both tests and subjects were cancelled, and the cadets were able to enjoy 10 days of unexpected vacation. The cadets were seen celebrating. Kim Soo-hyuk was annoyed to see that. They are really wayward children. How can they have fun when there are many injured cadets at this time? But they don't seem to care about it at all. They have even planned what activities they will do during the vacation. Hearing that, Kim Soo-hyuk then told them to stop thinking about unimportant things and return to their respective dormitories quietly. While Hajin was listening quietly, he was then surprised when he got a message from his notebook. The message certainly came from the co-author. The storyline change message finally came. Hajin could only curse at the sight of it. The message contained a description of Alex Lancaster. A strong attachment to the family members who had passed away. His anger was getting stronger. There was a high probability that he would attack Rachel without waiting for reinforcements if the opportunity arose. His danger increased from 7.5 to 8.5. Reading that, Hajin wondered, wasn't Lancaster one of the characters he wrote who had a connection with England? His goal was to conquer the United Kingdom. The villain who was already quite strong has become stronger than in the original storyline and appeared earlier. Hajin could only curse. If he knew this would happen, he would have increased the number of kind characters, but he felt that this was not too bad. He managed to get Rachel's blood, but when Hajin was thinking about it hard, his head was suddenly nudged by someone. That person was Nayun. Hajin then looked at her in confusion. Seeing that, Nayun then mockingly asked, "What are you looking at?" Hajin then got annoyed at that, but he decided to ignore her. The incident was seen by Soho and Yonghan. Yonghan asked, "Did they fight again?" Soho was silent for a moment. He then uncertainly asked, "Don't they look more familiar than before?" But Yonghan didn't feel the same. He even asked him, "Is there something wrong with his eyesight?" After finishing her class, Nayun then returned to the dormitory. After getting there, she then smiled proudly because she had successfully bullied Hajin. Why did he start a fight if he couldn't do anything? but when she was about to change her clothes, she suddenly got a message. It was her assessment report during the exam. Seeing that, Nayun then decided to immediately see the results. She was curious, because what Kim Suho wrote was also in it, and she then read Kim Suho's assessment of her. During the exam, it was a sure victory. She seemed to be worried about a lot of things. It seemed that there were some internal and external factors that took away her confidence. Even so, she is a talented archer and a very talented cadet, an unwavering killer with Qian Lima as her opponent. With hard work and extraordinary talent, she managed to give a perfect result. Someone might think she is not talented enough, but that is not true. Her shortcoming is not talent, but her confidence. If she continues to progress in the same way as the way she believed in herself today, he believes she can become the best hero. That was the report of Kim Suho's assessment of her. Reading that, Nayun felt that this was very embarrassing, but it managed to restore her confidence. No matter what others said, she decided to stick with the crossbow. After that, Nayun then read the assessment report of others. The author of the report turned out to be anonymous. She didn't know who this was, but it was a very long assessment, and she then decided to read it. But as she continued to read the assessment report, the worse her mood became. She was really very upset when she read it. She then shouted in annoyance. Her shout was so loud that it startled Hazuki, who was walking outside her room. Nayun realized who the author of the report was as she read it. She was really upset. She would not forgive this bastard.